Guns in schools. Recently, there was even in Mississippi some legislation to allow teachers to be armed in schools, and the issue with the guns, we have the AK-47s, what people might call assault rifles, and the debate whether or not people should actually have them. And is this really an issue that a U.S. Senator would even need to take up? Because the gun issue, with regard to parents and schools and teachers, is that a U.S. issue, a federal issue, or is that something that will be handled on a state level?
Well, it's something that should be handled on the state level, and there's been recent attempts within the Department of Education, well-meaning senators, well-meaning representatives, trying to actually create another program within the Department of Education that arms teachers, that requires these school resource officers and requires teachers be armed. And I would oppose that. I'm all for teachers being armed, but this is a state issue. It's actually more of a local school district issue. And I would oppose any legislation from the federal government, the national government, telling the state legislatures and the state school systems what they must do. And speaking on that, I want to talk about nationalism versus federalism, because that is something that's important that's going on right now. There's this big nationalist movement going on, and nationalism is really top-down governance. It's the decisions made in Washington, D.C. by bureaucrats, and I don't care whether it's Department of Health, Department of Education, whatever. And these orders or these dictates go down to the state legislatures, and they say, you must operate within this manner here, this system here. Think Common Core. That's Common Core education. That's an example of nationalism. Obamacare, an example of nationalism. And federalism is the opposite. Federalism is bottom-up governance. Federalism is 50 independent nation states, 50 independent laboratories of innovation, 50 independent states trying to find out the best way to do something, the most efficient, cheapest, the best way to do something, as opposed to nationalism, which is top-down governance. It's one size fits all, and we know that doesn't work. So if I'm elected to the Senate, I'm going to demand federalism, and I'm going to tell the federal government to butt out of state issues, such as whether someone can carry an AR15 or a AK-47.
Well, why is it important that we allow them? Because they're these big weapons that look like big war machines.
They're scary, huh?
And they're really scary. You see them in the video games being used a lot, and a lot of people think that we shouldn't have them. There's no reason for anybody to have one.
I don't buy into this notion that the AR-15 harms people. I think if we were keeping score, the AR-15 and the AK-47 have probably saved more lives than they've killed. So this idea that only the government should have guns, I don't like that a bit. I don't like it a bit. It just scares me to death. History is ripe with examples of out-of-control governments that, the citizenry were unarmed. I think the 20th century, 320 million people were killed by armed governments. And look that one up. 320 million people were killed in the 20th century alone by governments, and these people that they killed were either unarmed or underarmed. And I'm talking about Stalin to Mao Zedong, Pol Pot, there was Pinochet. There were some horrible mass killings that took place in the 20th century. And it was possible because the citizenry was disarmed. So it's more than just having teachers armed. We need an armed populace.
Thank you.
You're welcome.